Hello! I've been trying to figure out how to start this video for a couple of minutes now, and so I think this is how I'm gonna do it. I'm just going to go straight into the story. The point of the video is to talk about my experience with pets growing up and the fact that my household growing up should not have had pets the way that they did, or the way that we did. And I just want to talk about that. So, growing up, I had two younger siblings, and I was the oldest, and then we were all raised by a single mother, and our fathers weren't really in the picture, and they didn't help. Theirs helped a little bit, but mine didn't help at all. When I was about, I would say maybe 11 years old, my mom had a coworker who was sort of a friend also, who had adopted a blue tick, red tick hound puppy, but the puppy was too active for them in their lifestyle. So, being that my mom had us three children, and my mom's coworker thought that we had more of an active lifestyle, my mom's coworker asked her if we would take the blue tick, red tick puppy, and if we wanted it, because she really didn't want to, just get rid of it, you know what I mean? My mom came to me and asked me if I wanted a dog, and obviously I said yes, and my mom explained to me that I was going to have more responsibility, and that I would need to take care of it, and that she was going to help me, but we're going to have to train the dog, and I agreed to all of that. But I was 11, I'm pretty sure I was 11, and I didn't really understand exactly how much responsibility all that was. You know, I didn't have any concept of that. So, anyway, we wound up getting the dog, and my mom really did place all the responsibility on me. And at first we tried to let her be free in the house, and we just tried to keep an eye on her. But we couldn't control her, and my mom wasn't willing to take the time to train the dog. So the dog's name was Paisley. So Paisley wound up being tied with a leash on her, attached to her collar, to a screw at the bottom of the wall. We had a hallway that went to all our bedrooms and the bathrooms. It wasn't a very big house. It was like one hallway with two small bedrooms, and then at the end there were two somewhat larger bedrooms, at least for the house, but they weren't that big. They're just standard bedroom sizes. And then the two smaller bedrooms are half the size of a regular bedroom. And then there's a full bathroom, and then there's a half bathroom. And that's side by side down this hallway, and then at the end of the hallway there's a closet. So, sorry. We also had, so then we came into the house through the kitchen, and the kitchen was on the side of the house. And then when you go through this way, the living room opens up, and then the hallway goes, So Paisley was tied with her leash to her collar to a screw in the wall, where she could go into the kitchen, into the living room, and then down the hallway just a little bit. So no matter where we were in the house, unless we were in the basement, we could kind of keep an eye on her, or see her, or she could see us. Sorry, I had to keep clearing my throat. But anyway, that was the way that we had her for, I think, 2 years. And we never took her as a family on walks. My mom never took her on walks. My mom never actually helped me train her. Instead, when I failed to train Paisley by myself, because I didn't know what I was doing and I was 11, and I also felt very intimidated by it. And I would try, and when it wasn't working, I felt like I was doing it wrong and I just would never be able to do it. So, like, I never trained her either, really. But I guess my point is, instead of embracing Paisley as like a member of our family, or, you know, the family dog, my mom very quickly started treating Paisley as a nuisance and as something that was annoying and frustrating and a waste of money, and like we would be better off if we had never gotten Paisley. And I was attached to the dog because I was the one that took care of it. I was the one that answered to its needs and everything. It was a her, so I was the one that kept answering to her needs. Like, I took care of Paisley, and Paisley loved me the most. And I really liked that. Like, I really felt special, and I felt like I had a special connection with that dog. In the morning, if I wasn't up out of bed and if I didn't come out of my room, she would bark down the hallway until I would come out. And she didn't do that for my other members of the family. My mom didn't even treat her well in any way either. Like, the rule was we had to take her down to the basement every night and lock her in her kennel, and then she would sleep in her kennel in the dark basement by herself. And if she barked, if she whatever, my mom was like, you need to just ignore her. Like, she needs to learn that, you know, this is how it is. So I would take her on walks, and I would put my rollerblades on and I would let her pull me. Or I would just rollerblade and, like, you know, I would try to keep up with her, but she tended to pull me a bit. But, you know, I would take her and we would go for a long time, but she would still be active because she was a hunting dog. And I guess I didn't say that in the beginning, but blue tick, red tick hounds, people call them purple ticks, they're hunting dogs. And they're really good hunting dogs. But she had a lot of energy, and being tied up in the house all day wasn't good for her. It wasn't enough. And then just getting like 2 or 3 walks a day and then the random going outside to go to the bathroom, it wasn't enough to keep her active and keep her happy. But we kept her for over 2 years until eventually my mom got a boyfriend, and the boyfriend didn't like the dog. And then the final straw was my mom's boyfriend's kid was like 9 years old, and he had fallen asleep in one of our living room chairs, and he pissed in the chair. And like 2 days later, I was trying to let Paisley run around the house without being on the leash, and she jumped up on the couch and she fucking pissed on the couch. And my mom's boyfriend at the time had told me, like, you can't, you, like, they were like making fun of me almost, like I shouldn't let Paisley off of the leash, and if I do, whatever she does, it's my responsibility, and just, you know, blah blah blah. My mom was kind of abusive, and she allowed her boyfriend to be as well. So anyway, when he saw her piss on the couch, I grabbed her, but like I can't stop it. She was peeing. Like, he started to just berate me about it. And I looked at him and I said something along the lines of, I just don't know why it's okay for your son to piss all over the chair when he's a human 9-year-old, but the dog doing it is such a bad thing. And he literally got so mad that he took his kid and he told my mom that because of me, they're leaving and they won't be coming back for a couple of days. Because they didn't really live with us. They stayed with us for a long time and for long periods of time. But then, they always, like, they had their own home. So they would come over for, like, the whole weekend, and then they would, like, go back home for Monday, and then come back in the evening. Sometimes stay the night, sometimes go home. Sometimes we would go over there. And when we would go over there, what we do with the dog? Paisley just got locked in her kennel. It was awful. And anyway, the only reason we got rid of Paisley was because of that. And my mom's boyfriend was, like, basically to hurt me because I was so attached to the dog. He and my mom decided that they were going to get rid of her. And they gave her to one of his friends from work that raises and breeds hunting dogs, and then he, like, rents them to hunters. And they promised me that I would be able to visit Paisley again and all this other stuff. And I remember I had to bring Paisley out in winter one day. They put her in the back of a truck inside this, like, cage thing that he keeps the dogs in. She was hauled off and I never got to see her again. And my mom would just say, "Yep, she's doing so well. She's so much happier out there." I never even got to see any pictures, so hopefully she got a happy ending. But a couple years later, after my mom and her boyfriend broke up, my mom decided she wanted to get another dog. And she asked me and my siblings and I, if we wanted a dog. And we all actually said no. I said no, my siblings said no. We said we don't want to take care of it. We don't want to, like, face having to lose it again. And my mom just kept pushing and pushing, and she would have us look at adoption websites with her, or, you know, that kind of thing. Like, I don't remember, maybe it was like Craigslist or something. I don't know if that's a thing on Craigslist. But we would look at pages of dogs that people were trying to rehome, or from adoption centers or something. And eventually she found a dog named Dexter, and she decided that she wanted Dexter. And, so even though my siblings and I all said we didn't want a dog, she kind of, like, convinced us into wanting a dog. Like, she kept talking about it, and she kept saying it was going to be such a great thing, and that she thinks we would like a dog, and that it would be good for teaching us responsibility. And so eventually my siblings and I were like, obviously you're going to do it, because we know our mom. So we just kind of, like, we're like, okay. And so one day she decided that, well, like, she set up a meeting to get Dexter. And so one day we drove to Madison, Wisconsin from where we lived, and we got Dexter. And Dexter was a rescue dog. And he had a few quirks, like he really hates bicycles for some reason. And he really did not like men. And with my mom, he kind of, like, stuck himself to mom really quick. And then he did not like men approaching my mom, including me. So if mom was on the couch and Dexter was with her in the living room, which was, like, always once we got him, and I would come in the living room, just coming in the living room, he would bark at me, and if I got close, he would jump down and he would be like, you know, he was gonna bite me. And that's sort of like, the biggest problem with when we got Dexter was, once again, my mom did not take any time to train him, but this time he wasn't a puppy. He was a rescue dog who had had a home for a while, like a decent home, and he had already had some training, so he understood things like sit and come, and he knew his name. But he wasn't that good of a listener even to my mom. And he needed more training. I mean, like I just said, he would literally bark at me and bite me for coming in my own living room. But that's the part I wanted to talk about, is that my mom, that started happening like the day that we brought him home. My mom would laugh about it. She would just sit there and laugh about it. And at first I thought, it was just kind of funny. I didn't think that it was going to continue, but my mom allowed that dynamic to continue the entire time that we had Dexter. And then she would actually make me into the bad guy, and she would say, "You stress him out. He's got white hairs because you stress him out." I stressed him out just by, walking around. I wasn't allowed to get close to my sisters when he was around them, or he would bark at me and he would, threaten to bite me, and he did bite me a couple times. I was a man. I was a boy. I was the only one in the house. And so, because he was a rescue dog who was probably abused by men, I don't know, but, he would attack me. And, one time he was tied out in the yard, and he managed to, break his tie out by, he snapped it. And he went and bit a lady who was running down the road, which, I mean, that was kind of weird that he would bite a lady like that, but we don't really know why. We think it's just because she was, running, but I came out. I was the first one outside, of course. Mom came out after me, and I grabbed him. She was like, he bit me. I went in and grabbed her a wet washcloth, and I came out and handed it to her. And I was only 16, and I didn't know any better, so I just was like, "I'm so sorry. He's just not the best. He's bitten me even. He's ripped my thumb open." And after the lady left, my mom looked at me and she was like, "Are you dumb? You won't ever tell someone that you have a dog that bites people after it's bitten someone. Are you stupid?" And she started getting so mad at me. And instead of focusing on the fact that she never trained the dog not to bite people, or that she had the dog tied out, and that's what she had told us to do, was just tie him out and not pay attention. You can just come inside. That was the way that she had things set up. So it was her fault that someone got bit. And she was also the adult who was responsible for that animal, who was responsible for Dexter. My mom was lucky, and that lady never sued my mom. I don't even think she sued my mom for hospital costs, because she did go in to get checked. It wasn't that bad. It punctured the skin, and it did have blood, but it wasn't to where, it tore muscle tissue or anything off, or anything like that. She was able to, walk away just fine. Once I apologized, I think she could kind of tell that my mom was crazy and that I was whatever, and I think she kind of felt bad, so she kind of calmed down and went from being angry and upset to, she was still upset, but she was also kind of "Okay, yeah, I am gonna go to the hospital, but I think I'm gonna go now." And she had said that she was gonna want to be reimbursed for the hospital bill, and that was it. But like I said, I really don't even think she ever, because my mom had never talked about it, and I think that's something my mom definitely would have complained about. But that's, to me, not even the worst part of the story. The worst part of the story is that very quickly after we got Dexter, my mom started to do things like, if we needed to go for a day or we were all going to be gone for like a full day, she would lock him in our rooms, like our bedrooms, me, my younger siblings. And sorry, had to clear my throat again. Yes, she would put like a couple of those puppy pads down, but even when we would put like 2 or 3 layers down and we would put them like we would space them out so that they covered a good amount of square space. First of all, she never trained Dexter to actually use them, so it was always just sort of like hoping that we covered enough of the floor that that's where he would go, or like he would just happen to go where we put them. But then also, for an entire day, it didn't matter, because it would just sit there and sit there and sit there, and our rooms were carpeted. And so was our hallway and living room. And so, our room started to just smell like piss. We would take towels, paper towels, whatever, we would stand on them and we'd try to soak up the pee, but eventually you walked in our house and it just hit you in the fucking face. It was so bad. Like, my relatives knew what was going on. My grandmother went from every Christmas and every Thanksgiving and every holiday, she would stay at our house for like a few days to a week or so, to she would only be willing to visit for like one night at a time, and like she would only stay if she really needed to, like if there was a really bad snowstorm that we weren't expecting or something, or if we had just driven a lot for like one of my sister's dance competition, or my other sister's something, or my band stuff, and she like couldn't drive anymore, then she would stay. But it went from her being willing to stay like all the time and to not at all. And other people in my family just like weren't even willing to come over anymore, and if they did, they didn't want to go any further than the kitchen. And our rooms became just so gross, and the living room and the hallway also got to be really, really bad, just from random accidents from Dexter. And so eventually even my mom couldn't handle it anymore, and she finally started ripping up the carpets, and she had me help her. And the house is still like, the wall trim is missing. There's a couple of spots where there's like little nails sticking up out of the floor, because my mom just like ripped up the floor, and then she did a DIY project where she put linoleum tile down after we scrubbed the base of the floor with ammonia. And then after that, we still had Dexter, but when Dexter went to the bathroom on the floor, it was a hard floor, so at least we could just, soak it up and mop. But our bedrooms never got the carpet out of them. So the only thing that ever happened was just a lot of shampooing. But they got to a certain point where it's like, no matter how much shampooing is done, that like little bit of pee smell, it'll never go away. So even the last time I visited my mom's house, there's like, you can kind of smell it just a little bit in certain parts of bedrooms, And I tried to tell my family that maybe we should rip up the carpets in the bedrooms too, because like that's gross. Like, I know that mom's done a good job of like cleaning up the house, and the dogs got put down, so that wasn't a problem anymore. And that's a whole thing. But like, the room still kind of smell. It's, you know. And my aunt was like, Michael, you know what? I think it's time that you start growing up. Because I'm not willing to just let things like that be. I need to give my mom more credit. She did the best that she could. No, she didn't. Locking a dog in our bedrooms and letting them piss and shit, and then making us come home to that and making us clean it without even helping us. While you fucking scream at us about how it's our fault or something, or like how you can't believe your life has come to this. No, my mom didn't do her best. I honestly feel like she didn't even try to be a good mom at times. So, when my aunt started insulting me like that and telling me it's time to grow up and blah blah blah, after I had been moved out since I was 19 years old, and I had not gotten any financial help from them since I was 19 years old, and I think I was like 21 at this time, I got up to go outside, and she was like, where are you going? We're having a conversation right now. And I was like, no, I'm not gonna, like... And so, I didn't even really say anything. I just, like, looked at her, and I was like, I'm not gonna talk to you like that. Like, we were having lunch. I think she grabbed a muffin or a cheeseburger or something, and she chucked it at me, but she was so mad she didn't even come close. She threw it way over my head, and it hit my mom's, like, above her door frame. And so anyway, that was the last time I talked to my aunt. And back a little bit. My grandfather had a dog named Morgan, and when my grandfather got brain cancer and needed to live with family members to, like, make sure that he was good, you know, to help take care of him, my mom took in Morgan. Like, we took in Morgan as well. So for a few years before I moved out, or maybe just like 2 years before I moved out, we had 2 dogs. And so that was part of why the carpet got ripped up, was because it got really bad. And like, as a teenager, I couldn't have friends over. It was too fucking embarrassing. It was too shameful. So growing up, from the time I was like 13 until I moved out, I didn't feel like I could have friends over. I didn't feel like I could do anything in my own home. Eventually, when TJ came in the picture, the first time TJ ever came to visit my family in my home, when we walked in the house, there was several puddles of pee that had been sitting there for so long that they had congealed, because my family had gone on a camping trip and we were meeting them at my mom at the house to, like, follow her back to the campsite, and TJ and I were coming from my college dorm. And so, you know, we let ourselves in, and there were piles of shit everywhere. Like, every single room had a pile of shit. Every single room had a puddle of pee, and the pee had congealed because they had been gone for like 2 days. So you could poke it and it was like gelatin. I cleaned it up. I cleaned the entire thing up for my mom, and when she got home, she got super mad. Because she was upset that we had seen the house like that, because she didn't want us to go in the house before she got there. And instead of saying thank you or anything, because I had just cleaned her house and cleaned up the mess, she started freaking out. And anyway, after seeing the house conditions like that and seeing what my younger siblings were living in, and then also seeing the way that my mom treated me and the way my mom reacted, TJ decided he needed to call social services because he was a daycare worker and he just, like, he couldn't stand that. He couldn't stand to see it. So CPS got involved, and when they called me, I was honest with them because TJ kind of made me realize, and that weekend made me realize my mom is off her rocker and she needs a wake-up call. And at the time, I was still trying to see the best in my mom, so I believed that she just needed a wake-up call. Like, she needed a reality check. Turns out that's just who she is, but... in the end, she wound up having to put the dogs down because CPS was involved, and that was, like, the biggest thing was the pee and poop everywhere and the condition of the house because of that. That was, like, the biggest thing where it needed to change, and they told my mom that. So my mom's solution was just to put the dogs down. Morgan was old, like, she was old. Dexter wasn't really that old, but he was probably, like, 12, and he probably would have lived to be, like, 15 or 16. So his life was unfortunately kind of cut short. But I became the bad guy, and I became the scapegoat. And even though I was the one that literally cleaned my mom's entire house before CPS got there, just to make sure her butt was saved and she didn't lose my siblings, because if I hadn't done the cleaning that I had done before they ever showed up, it would have been real bad. I made it as clean as possible, and they still were like, this isn't okay. And obviously, my younger siblings didn't want to end up in foster care, and I didn't want them to end up in foster care. So, like, no one in my family, including me, pushed for things really, really hard. Everybody was, like, just wanting it to be over. Including me, like, because I felt like the bad guy. And, because yes, TJ reported, but once he reported, they called me and I told them what was up. I sent them pictures. Like, because once I moved out, it got incredibly worse. Like, it was already so bad when I was living there, but once I moved out and I went to college, just because I was the one that usually cleaned and took care of dishes and cleaning the bathroom and all that other stuff, and I was the one that kept the house in order as a teenager, in any kind of way, once I moved out, it got so bad that I was like, yeah, like, what the hell? Like, I couldn't believe that that was the way that they were living once I moved out. And now I am no contact with my mom or any of my family because they decided to make me the scapegoat, and they decided to blame me for forcing change instead of blaming my mother for that shit, and also blaming themselves for enabling her my entire childhood and my teen years. And that's like a really big part of my family situation. My aunt lived in Virginia for a really long time, and she had only moved back for a couple years before I moved out and went to college. And so she didn't see half of what went on, and even when she was back home and she moved back here, she didn't really ever want to come over. Like, she is a self-proclaimed introvert, and she wasn't around enough to have a single clue. So for her to tell me I need to give my mom more credit, you don't have a single clue. And when I tried to tell my family about me walking to pay the water bill because I got home from school when I'm 15 years old and I find the water notice of $300 something needs to be paid or your water's going to get shut off. And so I walk to the water place and I pay it myself. I've been doing that kind of thing since I was 15. Like, my mom doesn't need more credit. I deserve more credit for the way that I was a really, really good kid. I was a really good son. She sort of forced me into a partner role once I was older. And like, the only person who deserves more credit between my mom and I is me. And I'm still like struggling with accepting the fact that I don't really have a true parent. I don't really have a parent who can put me above themselves. And I'm also struggling to accept that I was forced growing up to be someone who puts everyone else above me. Because that was the way that I got validation. That was the way that I felt like I was worth anything, was by doing something for the people in my family, was by like acts of service. Like, I don't even know how to describe it, but like, that was the only way that my family was good to me, was like with my grandma, if I mowed her lawn, and if I was like willing to do the things that they wanted me to do. My mom wanted me to be her puppet growing up, and I didn't realize that this was an actual thing. I always used to say it, and apparently it's like a real phenomenon. I had to match my mom's emotions. When my mom was happy and she was laughing, I was happy and I laughed. When my mom was sad, I was sad. When my mom was upset, I got upset with her. If my mom was upset at me, I got timid and I backed down. I had to listen and watch my mom's emotions and my mom's feelings. I had to listen and watch for my mom's emotions and feelings. She never ever gave any consideration to mine. It was always about her. And it's the same with my younger siblings. It's always about my mom. And whatever she's feeling is the most important. And you have to match her energy. And like, if she's happy and she's having a good day and you come to her and you try to vent some frustrations, or you're not having a good day and you're not able to give her the energy that she wants, she will get upset and she will demand that you improve your attitude. And if you're happy when she's upset, she will put you down and she'll say things like, "What are you so excited for?" Or she'll find things to berate you about, like, she'll just make comments about your appearance or about what you're wearing, or, you know, that kind of thing. She'll just find something to kind of kill your mood, to kill your good energy. And I realized recently, my mom truly did expect me to be her emotional puppet growing up. And I think the rest of my family actually kind of was aware. My grandmother called my mom a martyr mother when I was young, and my aunt repeated it when I was older, and like, they've called my mom a martyr mother. A martyr mother is not a good thing. Like, to be a martyr mother is not a good thing. And so if they're calling her that, they obviously are somewhat aware of the way that she was when I was growing up towards us as the children. And I think it's really sick that they allowed that, and that they didn't step in more. I think my grandfather, and I think part of it with my grandfather and my grandmother and my aunt, is like, they all love my mom. And, you know, they don't want to like hurt my mom or anything or put her in any jeopardy, but they should have loved us more. They should have loved us just as much as they loved my mom, because I don't know, it wasn't acceptable. Like, yeah, I'm alive, I'm kicking, I'm fine. But even my grandma actually said this to her sister, who's like my great aunt. My grandma said later on that she should have taken me and my siblings in, and she should have raised us herself. But the thing is that does very little good. Now that we're all, like, my middle sibling is 18 now, and my other sibling is 16. So saying stuff like that, first of all, doesn't do anything without action, but second of all, like, it's a bit late to start saying and thinking stuff like that. And even though she would say something like that, I'm still the bad guy for ever getting CPS involved or bringing my boyfriend home and him doing that. And that's pretty much a rundown of my experience with my toxic family. And why I have no contact with them. But yeah, if you're gonna get a dog or an animal, you should be able to take care of it, and you should have the time for it. And if you're gonna get an animal for your kids, you shouldn't just, like, leave them to deal with it themselves. You have responsibility. Just because it's your child's animal, especially if they're, like, younger than 14, like, they are gonna need a lot of help taking care of that animal and training that animal and what have you. So, I just wanted to talk about all of that. I am at Lake Mahnomen again. I'm gonna go for a nice walk. I don't think I'm gonna be able to record much of it though, because this video is 40 minutes long, which I did not mean to do that. I thought it was gonna be like 15-20 minutes. And I'm gonna need to get this uploaded before I have any more storage space for much else, so I didn't really know how to end it. That's why I'm just sort of like, by the way, I'm at the park, because I just don't really feel like there's much of a comfortable way to end that kind of topic. But that was my story about growing up and having a couple of dogs that we, like, the dogs deserved better too. Dexter and Morgan deserved better lives than that. And it's too bad. I mean, nothing can really be done about it. They didn't have the worst lives an animal can have. Like, they always were fed. They didn't really have to, like, sit in the pee or anything, because, like, when they would pee on the floor, then they would jump back up onto the bed or the couch or whatever else. So it wasn't, like, the worst existence an animal could have, but it definitely could have been a lot better. And I know that both of those animals could sense how tense everything always was in the house. And, like, Dexter was obviously, like, not feeling good when I would go towards my mom or my siblings, and for him to, like, bark at me like that and bite me and whatever, he obviously had gone through things that were causing that kind of a reaction. He was a rescue dog. So it's overall just kind of a pretty sad, it's like a pretty sad story. I don't really know. I don't like calling it a story because it actually happened, but it's a pretty sad story. Anyway, that is the end of my video, I think. Sorry that it's a pretty somber video, and that I spoke for such a long time. But anyway, take care.